So my name is Mo. Well, my full name is Modupe, and but everybody calls me Mo. I'm a lawyer, well, for the most part. But I also have a startup called Scale My Hustle. I started my practice in Nigeria, where I worked for about 5 years before I moved to the US, and then I live and work there now. So I run my own practice now, and it's really focused on innovation. Mostly because I really wanted to be a startup lawyer, and at the time, I just didn't know how to go about it. So I was like, you know what? Let me just try and do my own thing. But on the other side, I also run Scale My Hustle, which is a community of entrepreneurs. And the idea behind that really started from being a startup lawyer. I realized that a lot of startups were at the point where when they're trying to raise money, they were just not investment ready. And there was so much information that was not out there. So I said, oh, how do we put this information in a way that people could relate to, right? And the first place I thought about was sort of like digitalizing it. So that's how Scale My Hustle really came about, and that's really about me.
Okay. I want to just talk about the content you're churning
Okay.
out there. And if anyone could learn from that, what channels do you run on social media? What works for you as a lawyer? And how do you prepare that sort of content?
Okay, so I mean, there are two main platforms that I think are really helpful for lawyers. Number one is, of course, LinkedIn, and then the second one is Twitter. The reason why Twitter, I think, is very vital for lawyers, especially, or even people who are like really in industries where there's like information overload, is because Twitter is kind of like nerdy, if I could say that. So for the most part, people are used to reading text, first of all. So it's fine. You don't really have to have like images or anything like that. You just have text and then people could relate to it. And also, Twitter kind of like encourages discourse. So what that means is that it's easy for you as a lawyer to put out your opinion on a particular topic, and then other people will join in. So it kind of like helps you. LinkedIn, I think, is good because in a way, of course, you can, I mean, me personally, it helps me connect with people all over the world interested in what I'm interested in. So that's how I use both platforms. Instagram, not so much, at least for legal work.
Okay. Some lawyers prefer to be on Instagram because
Yeah.
people are very visual. I see some pictures that like gospel artists post, especially Kenyan gospel artists. They post this nice picture of them, and then they say the mercies of God are new every morning.
Yeah.
It's actually not related at all to their nice picture.
Yeah.
What content can lawyers post out there? What do you see as working? You said, for example, that Twitter is big on text.
Yeah.
Instagram is big on images, for example.
Yeah.
What works on LinkedIn?
On LinkedIn, I would say short articles. Basically, because for me, one of the articles that has even brought a lot of work for us to my law firm is something I did on raising capital as an African startup. Like, if you're an African startup trying to raise money from the US, and it was just a short post, put it on LinkedIn, and then it just keeps bringing people. So I think LinkedIn is very good for short, like the sweet spot is about 500 words. I know as lawyers it's pretty difficult to like have 500 words, but you want a situation where people can read it, potential clients can read it. And at this point, I just wanted to emphasize something, because I feel like as lawyers, constantly we're surrounded by other lawyers. We think, we talk like lawyers, we relate, we write like lawyers, but like other lawyers are not exactly your clients. So depending on the kind of law you practice, right? But if you're trying to get clients using digital media, one of the things you have to do is step out of that. I'm writing as a lawyer. And then for me, it was a challenge at first. And what I did was get someone who was like a social media intern. I would write all my legal stuff, and then they would take it and sort of like, just make it not as legalistic or whatever as it were. And then, we constantly did that back and forth. And then I'm like, oh, okay, this is what it is. Because the truth is, if you put out content that only lawyers can read, then, the point is lost. Because what you're trying to do is get as many people as possible to relate with your content. Yeah.
Okay. Talking about personality.
Yeah.
are you who you write online? Is the more we see on your newsletter and on Twitter, is it the same person? Do we need to assume a different persona? And you've talked about having this digital assistant,
Yeah.
or a social media intern who helps you through this journey. Are you the same person? And if I think I'm rude, do I need two accounts? I see
Yeah.
people who run this official account where they're talking about
Okay.
legal stuff,
Yeah.
and then they have this other account that is silly, is discussing
Yeah.
politicians and events. What do you think?
So yeah, I mean, that's a tricky question, but for the most part, I would say it's the same. But there was a time where it was separate, right? So I had like my personal Twitter, and then I had like the professional Twitter. Only because like I just didn't like the idea when people would Google my name and then they would see like my personal Twitter. So I was like, okay, I needed something to archive, the Google search and all of that. So when people see, when they Google my name, they'll see, me looking all serious. But at the same time, one of the things I realized, especially when I started my own law firm, is that people want their lawyers to be human, right? Like nobody is expecting you to be 100% perfect. I have situations where people come to me and clients come to me only because I'm relatable, right? Like, so I realized and I said, okay, you know what? What's going to happen is, so I felt comfortable merging both, right, at that point, because I realized that people would, when people come to me, they will tell me, oh, one of the reasons why I'm discussing this deal with you is because you appear to me like someone I can talk to, right? And then as a lawyer, one of the things that you want is for people to feel like they can talk to you, and the easiest way to do that is to let people trust you, and you would not be able to get that trust if you appear as a robot, right? Yeah.
That's true. Tell us about your newsletter.
Yeah.
When we were thinking of inviting you, Sumaya and several other people at the office went crazy. Like, I'm a fan of that newsletter. And I thought, this is like a drug. People are hooked to your
Yeah.
newsletter. Why?
I don't know how to answer that question because, okay, so for my newsletter, I actually didn't talk about it. So I have a newsletter which has nothing to do with law. My newsletter is just a personal development newsletter. I just write about the stuff I find fascinating. And the reason I don't know why people like the newsletter. Maybe I have to ask somebody who actually reads it. But what started was because I realized that there were other things I wanted to post about that I didn't want to post on Twitter, and I wanted to connect to people even more on a more personal level. And again, just like I said, even with you trying to appear human, there also has to be a balance, right? Like you don't want a situation where all your business is right out there in public. So I said, okay, I still want to talk more on some personal stuff. Let me start doing this. I didn't expect the newsletter to blow up the way it did. It kind of like, I think we're like on 20K subscribers right now, and it's just about 6 months old or so. And then, yeah, so I don't have an answer to that question, but I think, again, one of the things is because it's very relatable, right? So when you read it, it doesn't appear like, this is a newsletter written like a robot. It appears like this is a human being actually writing to you. So I think that's probably it.
Okay, I think I like that. 20K subscribers. How do you recruit people to your platform?
Yeah.
And two, do you have any automation tools that you use? There are lawyers who don't want to be online the entire week.
Yeah.
Are there tools that you can use that can schedule
Yeah.
either
Yeah.
tweets or whatever? What has worked for you?
Okay, sure. Happy to talk about all of them. So, for tweets, for instance, I use something called Buffer. So it's interesting because I'm active on Twitter, but I'm not really on Twitter. Like I could actually be sitting here and then my Twitter is active, right? Because I already know what I want to talk about, for the week. So I kind of like schedule it, and I'm busy during the day every week. So I just use Buffer a lot. Buffer is really good for Twitter. That's what I use. And I know you can probably use it for Instagram as well. I'm not sure. And then for your for newsletters, I use something called ConvertKit, but there are so many other ones. There's Mailchimp. There's like Salesforce has this one as well. But I do like ConvertKit because it doesn't like. I believe that that's one of the reasons why my newsletter doesn't come off as a newsletter because of the way the platform is. So when you're picking a platform, you also want to be careful with how the layout is. I feel like the MailChimp layout already looks so much like a newsletter that when people say they're like, oh yeah, whatever, they just kind of like turn off. So you kind of like have to be, creative in a way. So ConvertKit I like a lot.
Okay, maybe my final question would be:
Yeah.
people say Nigerians have to leave the continent to succeed,
Yeah.
and sort of true for other African countries as well.
Okay, I wasn't expecting that, but okay.
What do you think? Do you think that's true for you? If you ran this blog from Nigeria, for example,
Yeah.
would it still have the same impact, or we just love what's foreign?
Huh. Okay. So, in I mean, if I was in Nigeria, right, what would have happened was I probably wouldn't have had time to run it as as well as I'm doing right now, because first of all, I'm going to spend all my time in traffic. I'm going to look when I get back, I'm going to be really tired. I'm like, I don't even have time to. I don't have the creative energy. I probably get home. There's probably no electricity, and I'm like, oh yeah, whatever. I'll do this tomorrow. So, in a way, I think it's really about the environment. So the environment I'm in enables me to be able to, automate things. I could multitask and all of that. So that's why I can run a law firm, run Scale My Hustle, and run the newsletter, right?
Yeah.
Like, so it's just efficient. Now, I'm not in Nigeria anymore, so I really don't know what would have happened. But I do know that when I was, back home, it was just a lot more difficult to do stuff. Everything just had to be extra stressful just because of all, the infrastructure deficit around. So that's how I'll answer that. But there's no way for me to know for sure, because there's still people in Nigeria who are doing similar stuff like what I'm doing, and they're really doing well at it. So yeah.
Okay. It's Larry Madowo. Please come to the stage. A round of applause for Larry. Okay. So I'm seated in between two people who have just come from the States. And so if you need a visa, in church they say, please take that anointing.
We're running away from coronavirus.
Well, you guys are back home. So Karibu Larry.
Asante sana.
We are talking about branding. You post about everything.
Not everything. I just post about. It looks like I post about everything. I don't post about everything.
Larry's talking about his traveling, he's doing this. Does it have an impact on your work? And what's the justification of doing that?
I think it's really important to bring people into what I do, and especially as it relates to what my work is, which is I tell stories, right? I tell stories primarily on television, but also increasingly on social media, and that's a way that I brand myself for speaking engagements. I brand myself for all sorts of other business that's related to what I do, but also it's a great listening tool to listen to viewers, to get ideas, to test for opinions, to get sources. So I can't imagine doing my job without social media. I started my Twitter page, my Facebook, roundabout when people were just starting to catch onto these platforms. And Kenyans here I don't know how many of them know, but I actually formed the KTN Kenya Facebook page. And when I did, my bosses were like, why are you wasting time on Facebook? Our job is on TV. This Facebook nonsense. And there was a time when the Standard Group actually shut down shut down Facebook across the entire organization. As a media house, they didn't see why journalists were spending their time on Facebook. They were just like, we produce a newspaper, The Standard, and then we have a television station, KTN, and all of these other things are rubbish. To be fair, that was a long time ago, maybe 12, going on 13 years ago. So the world has changed a lot in that time.
Okay, that's good to hear. Anytime I see you speak somewhere, I think about inviting you to speak somewhere. And I think we need to get that lesson that whatever you post online, that's what people pick. They see you. And I started talking about tech, even when I didn't know what tech means. And then people thought about, who is the tech lawyer? Then they would come for you, even if you weren't.
That's how I found you, because you were talking about tech on your social. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, we need to connect with her. And so when my team was out in Uganda and we interviewed you in one of our BBC programs, and I only knew you from social media because you were constantly talking about law and tech and where those two intersect. And I'm just like, this is the other reason, which is the value of social media. Like, I'm out there meeting people and getting connected to people who I would otherwise not meet. And I am here again because of social media. So I'm just really appreciative. I'm in awe of what you and your team have achieved with this whole conference. So well done.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take maybe questions. Is there a Slido up, or we can do a mic? If you have a question on anything on branding, please, there would be, is that Slido? Is it on? Or we could do a mic? Okay. So I'm going to ask Larry. You should have been an ordinary journalist.
I am an ordinary journalist.
No, I don't think you are. So
all of them in the house are like, yeah, he's ordinary. It's not a big deal.
I don't think so. Because what would have happened is you could stay on in Kenya, be at KTN or any other station, report about deaths. Have you watched this news these days? When you watch the news, you just think, who died, who fought who. Like, there's nothing special about the news. But you branded yourself as this person, this journalist who understood technology. Then you began going for conferences. I remember there's a point, either you spoke or you were at the Mobile World Congress. And so anybody who wanted even an MC and a journalist to speak at the event, they would obviously go for you. How was that like? And how did you build this track record and even get into the BBC and then get this fellowship as well?
All right, so it's fascinating because literally I was supposed to be at Mobile World Congress this past week, and as you know, it got cancelled. I was speaking there last year and the year before. Mobile World Congress, they now call it just MWC, is the biggest mobile platform, mobile technology forum slash festival slash everything in the world. They have about 200,000 people come out to Barcelona every year, and for the first time in 33 years, this year it was cancelled because of coronavirus. So that's a big deal. And for me, somebody who used to cover tech, I was like, it'll be amazing to go there. And the first year I just went to visit and to report on it. And the next year, again, I was reporting. And after a while, I was like, you know what? I want to be on that stage. And the more I talked about tech and covered it and got connected to the right people, all of them, most of them through social, that's how I got connected to all those networks. And now I'm constantly having to field requests to speak at events around the world. A lot of them are on tech, even though I'm not a techie. I'm kind of a wannabe techie. It's kind of by extension. And so I was supposed to speak, for instance, at Collision in Toronto in June. That got cancelled as well. Everybody's cancelling conferences. Viva Tech in Paris is probably going to get cancelled as well. But it's just amazing to be able to, as an African, show up on these stages and show up as myself. I don't change who I am. I don't change where I'm from. Very always proudly Kenyan. And being able to talk on these global stages, and then people are like, what do you do exactly? I'm like, well, I'm a journalist. And also I do dabble in some social media. And randomly somebody will find my Twitter page or Facebook like, why do you have so many followers? And my honest answer is, I don't know. I don't go out of my way to impress people on my Twitter or my Facebook. I'm just constantly saying what is happening, what I think, and trying to bring people into my reporting, trying to tell them kind of behind the scenes. I might have interviewed somebody like, who did I interview recently? I might have interviewed a Nobel Peace Prize winner or a president of a random country. I'm like, oh yeah, while we were waiting, this happened. Or after it, this is what this person said. And people appreciate that. And I found that whether at the BBC or at KTN or at NTV, this was just a way that audiences got a look behind the way the sausage is made, and they appreciate it. And I think the people I follow, whether they're in agriculture or they're in law or they're in science, are the people who try and peel back the veil in these industries. I don't understand law, right? I'm just a guy who's like, if I have legal trouble, I want to call somebody. But the people that I appreciate most on social media are people who try and say, oh, this thing has just happened, this is a legal implication. And after a while, they build an audience, they build a following around that specific topic. Then these are the people you see writing books, these are the people you see getting interviewed on TV, these are the people you see getting quoted all the time in the papers because they have build their credibility around the topic. So whether you're, I don't know, you're litigation expert, so you're a maritime lawyer, or you're a commercial expert, are you already building a following in that field on your Facebook, on your Twitter, on your Instagram? Well, maybe not Instagram. So that people know that you're the go-to person for these things. Initially, it might look like there's nobody following you. You're like, am I just speaking into the void and there's nobody listening? But the more you do it and the more you hone your own voice and you know when to talk about things, and especially topical issues, bringing your own expertise, bringing your own ideas into it, but also your experience, the more that people will begin to appreciate it because there's always somebody who's an expert in one field. And on top of all of the rubbish on social media, which is everybody's got an opinion about everything, the experts will, I think, filter out and they will rise to the top. And I see that in lots of other fields. And I think the same is possible for people in the legal field.
Okay. What social media channel works for you? Do you have a YouTube channel? Say, hi guys, welcome to my channel.
Welcome to my channel.
And then there's no one.
Please like, subscribe, share. You can clearly tell what's my favorite YouTube channel, right? I don't have a YouTube channel, unfortunately. I don't have the time for it. I really respect people who have the time to curate that content and edit it and distill it into a few minutes someday. I like Twitter for just random musings. I like Facebook for connecting with people. You see a lot more engagement, certainly for me on my Facebook, I see a lot more engagement from people who are everyday people. Instagram is better for me for pictures. And so travel, random TVs outside my apartment. stuff like that. People, some people get that. People like that on Instagram, but I find Twitter, especially for discussing news and current affairs, it's best when people are reacting in real time to what's happening and they're looking for experts. And generally, because there's a lot of people who claim to be experts but they're not, usually when a major thing happens, they will try and coalesce around people who actually know that subject inside out. They teach it, they practice it, or they have experienced it.
Okay. So I'm going to ask a question to both of you. What's the greatest thing that happened to you on social media? This greatest opportunity that happened and you're like, oh my God, thank you that I am on Twitter or Facebook, wherever it was.
I mean, I'm trying to remember. Oh, okay. It was. Oh, I think my mic is off. Oh yeah, I think it was when someone from the British Parliament. I mean, there's a lot of them, but I'm just trying to remember the latest one. So someone from an MP in who's a seven representative at the British Parliament reached out to me because they wanted my opinion on how Brexit would affect funding to African startups, and I was like, hey, and then this person reached out to me on Twitter, and I was like, it's not possible, that this is actually for real. But a lot of unreal things have happened to me on social media. But I think that's the most recent one. That was in September also. So I found myself in October at the British Parliament discussing Brexit, and I was like, okay, this is cool.
That's nice. Okay, Larry?
There's too many things, so many wonderful things that social media has brought into my life. There's many conferences I spoke at in random parts of the world because somebody reached out to me on Twitter. And they were like, hey, we'd love for you to come. We saw you talking about this thing, or you were here, and we'd love for you to come and join us as well. So those are all opportunities just because I put myself out there and I'm willing to learn. I saw a question there that I want to answer even though you didn't tell me. Do you ever hesitate speaking your mind, especially on social media, if it may affect your brand as a whole? So my job at the BBC involves managing a bunch of millennials. And you know how millennials are. They all have opinions and they want everybody on social to know. And there's a lot of times when I had to call somebody and say, hi, I'm going to need for you to take down that tweet. And then when they've taken it down, I'm like, what were you thinking? The general guidance is, don't be a fool. If you would not put that in an email to your boss, maybe you shouldn't put it on Twitter. In our case, the guidance we give for our BBC journalists is, if you would not put that on the air on the BBC, if you not put it on the BBC website, you should not tweet it. Okay. Treat it the exact same way you are seen as a representative of your organization or your individual brand. And if that's something that you want people to know you for the rest of your life, if you're comfortable with it, by all means, put it out there. If you even have pause for a second, maybe you should not. So you could have pages and pages of rules, but the general guidance is don't be a fool. And if this is likely to affect your brand in future, just because of this instant, what are you looking for? Retweets? And it might hurt your brand significantly in future. I certainly don't recommend speaking your mind as freely as people might advocate.
Okay. Yeah. We better post maybe pictures of food and places.
Harmless.
Anything harmless. Do you have any comments on the same?
Yeah, I do like this question from Clinton, and it says, is social media relevant to start up law firms? How can startup law firms incorporate social media as part of their strategic growth? I mean, if you're a startup law firm and you're not on social media, that's a miss. That's because the truth is, first of all, you are entering in an industry that is a legacy industry. There's so many established folks out there, and then you want to break into that industry. The lowest barrier to entry is social media, honestly. And if you're not on social media as a startup law firm, you should leave this room and just go and, set up your social media pages. And then if you cannot do it yourself, then get a social media manager. Your social media manager is great if the person is a lawyer. If the person is not a lawyer, that's fine. The kind of strategy I would say is, number one is content marketing. As a lawyer, you're an expert. People are always looking to you for expert advice. So what you can do is, for instance, what we do is, if I want to get more clients that are people looking to raise money from the US, all I would do is put up an article that talks about, if you want to raise money from the US as an African, these are the steps you should take. Think about it. When you're looking for information for something, the first thing you do is that you Google. You're like, how can I cook this soup? And then you see probably, YouTube videos or whatever, and you probably see like 5 different recipes from, one person. And you're like, you know what, I trust this person. If the person comes up one day and says, oh, you know what, I have now opened a restaurant and I can deliver to you, what will you do? You'll be like, you know what, I've listened to this person on YouTube. I have read the person's recipes. I trust them, so I'm going to give them my money. So what you need to understand is, because a lot of people tell me, oh, I'm spending time on social media, I'm not getting any clients. It's not from day one. What you're doing is you're putting yourself in front of people, and then it takes a while for these things to convert. So I'll say the first one is content marketing, and you can do content marketing on your website. You can do it through a newsletter. You can do it through your social media. What we do, or what we're trying to do, is to have one main content, like a long form article. Then you can do something that is called content distribution. So you just have it across different channels, optimized for those channels. So if it's Instagram, it has to be image heavy. If it's LinkedIn, it's probably going to be a little bit shorter. If it's on your blog, it can be a lot longer. If it's Twitter, you can probably put it in short forms. You use GIFs or whatever. So yeah, that's what I would say.
All right. I think that's really good. We have 2 questions, and then we're almost out of time. Have you ever been trolled online? How do you handle bad press on social media as well? Somebody else is asking about, I think, low-tech journalism. Is anybody writing about, low-tech in Africa? Is there an opportunity for that? And then how do you see the role of media and social media personalities to speak truth to power? Those are like 3 questions in one. You can pick wherever you want to answer.
I'll just pick, So the first one I'll say is legal tech. Nobody's talking about it. There's a huge opportunity there. If you're in this audience and you're thinking about talking about it, I would say go for it. Nobody's really talking about it on the continent, and we're going to see a rise of, legal tech generally. The second thing about bad press is, yes, for someone who has a lot of followers, of course, I would have been, trolled online many times. I'm trolled online every day. As I'm sitting here, somebody is online trolling me, right? Like, it's normal. So one of the things I used to, in the beginning, I used to get really frustrated about it. But maybe social media is probably the only place where I would advise that if you're being trolled or if there's bad press, leave it alone. I know that in terms of like in real life, when there's, bad press, you're supposed to be like, oh, let me, try and fix it. But social media is kind of funny because the more you try to fix it, the worse it could get. So I would say leave it alone and let it ride out. You will be surprised that people will just move on to other stuff.
Okay, thank you, Larry.
Okay, so have I ever been trolled online? Nope, that's never happened. Everybody loves me. The internet is a wonderful place.
So lucky. Oh my God.
Everybody's supportive. It's just such a warm, nice place, right? Don't you guys agree?
No.
Of course I've been trolled online. But these people do not affect how I live my life. So here's the thing, and this is related to, I think, Sylvia's question about conflict of interest between your organization and your own personal interest and the values of truth, liberty, and justice. Okay, so I don't think it's a great place to argue. I mean, on Facebook, but especially on Twitter. A lot of nuance is lost when you try and argue with somebody in 140 or 1 hour, 200 and whatever characters. It's not possible to convey what you're trying to say in that short period. But also, it's rife for misunderstanding, and some people just do not want to get your point. Regardless of how clear you are and how many facts you present, they want to misunderstand you. Yeah. And the more you keep getting dragged into this rabbit hole, the harder it is to pull out. So at this point in my life, I'm not getting into an argument on Twitter. I have had hundreds of arguments on Twitter. I have tried to have clever clapbacks. I regret most of them. I was a child. I was stupid. Now, I would not do them. Like, if you have an opinion about me, I'm happy for you. I also have an opinion about me. That's all. So I think it's very rare, and I admire people on social media who are able to disagree disagree with you without being disagreeable. It's a very difficult skill to master, and very few people have it. Most people just want to troll you. You're stupid, and you should die. Why should I respond to that person? Or you should be ashamed for a so-called journalist. I'm like, okay. I'm sorry, you can do my job better than me, obviously. Why is I'm the one who's got the job? But there's so many different ways that you could respond to that, and none of them are nice. So I don't recommend reacting and dealing with trolls anymore. And when I was younger, 5, even 2 years ago, I might have said, give it back, give it to them as good as they're giving it to you. Now I'm just like, no, you get dragged down to that level, and you're all fighting in the mud, and none of you is looking good. And this is some random person with, some people might say punch up, which is if somebody responds to you, if they have more followers than you, maybe you want to respond to them. If they have fewer followers than you don't, I just say don't respond. Jesus said turn the other cheek. I don't mean for it to be religious, but I just think you shouldn't engage with trolls on social media. Sylvia wanted to follow up on what is the freedom of speech. I said don't have your own don't say things that will compromise your organization. I think it goes back to the point I said about you can disagree without being disagreeable. If you go on social and say this politician is a fool and the people of this state should be ashamed for having elected them, that's kind of a slippery slope. If you say, I disagree with your policy because of ABC, this is how it affects me, by all means, you should do so. But if you're going to be trolling people, if you're going to be just out there being nasty, being mean, basically you're going to be a cyber bully, I don't recommend you do it. But also, I don't recommend you should have internet at all.
Okay. About tweeting wherever and getting into trouble, I once tweeted, I was denied a UK visa. And I went on a Twitter
I was
rant.
also denied a UK visa. Join the queue.
Yeah, there's too many of us. And they're eating our visa money for the Queen's
We
birthday.
demand that money back. Do you think we can go Hakieto
Yeah, we should.
outside the British Embassy? Who will join us? Hakieto outside the British Embassy. I love it.
So anyway,
I'm going out
I was denied a visa.
Guys.
I went on social media, trolled them, and then there was a party. They were celebrating the Queen's, I think, 100th birthday or something. And somebody wrote my name on the list that I should be in this part of the party. And they kicked me out because of my tweets.
Oh,
Yes.
wow.
I was on that final list. I went home and thought through my life choices and wondered if the Queen's birthday was very important. But you know what? Anything you tweet, I think we need to think through the consequences and if you can handle that consequence. And I think also for lawyers, sometimes you tweet maybe and it's detrimental to your future client, for example. So I have learned not to tweet everything that is playing in my head. Sometimes I just write it down as my personal tweets in my notebook.
Hang on, Linda, though. I don't think you should have regretted that tweet. If they don't have the
I didn't
backbone,
regret.
if they don't have the backbone to invite you, then you should not be there anyway.
No, I just thought through, did I tweet right?
Yes, you did.
I wanted to make noise. But then the article about my denial of the visa appeared in the UK newspaper.
As it should. They should be embarrassed. They should be
ashamed. And so there was a lot of talk around, why are you denying startups in Africa visas? Why are you taking all this money? I went for a conference and they were giving us snacks and cocktails. And someone came, a Nigerian came and said, you're eating your visa money.
Eat them, chop them.
Chop visa money. So anyway, we have a voice, but then also we need to just consider and say, what's the consequence? Am I ready to bear the consequence? And that's okay. So your final closing remarks, what do you want to say, the two of you?
Yes, because I'm a nerd like that. So we're talking about digital media and branding, and I just had some key takeaways for anyone who's interested. So the first thing is, if you're trying to build a brand for yourself, personal brand, or your professional brand, make sure you choose a voice. How do you want people to view you? That's very important. The second thing is be human. People need to trust you, and for them to trust you, you need to show your humanity. The third thing is understand all the things that your target audience care about, even if you don't care about those things. The fourth one is be consistent. You have to really show up. And then the final one is, what do you stand for, right? That kind of like has to shine through. Is your law firm something that, is focused on efficiency or innovation or whatever it is? Make sure, that kind of like shines through. So that's it.
All right. Thank you, Larry.
I had Mo when I came in talking about how Lagos you'd be stuck in traffic, and I like Lagos in small doses.
Yeah,
so I can relate. My thoughts is do not say everything that comes to your mind on social unless you're calling out the colonizers for their racist visa tendencies. Then by all means, drag them. They deserve it.
They didn't even need any visas to come to our country.
They don't need visas to come to our countries, but we need visas to go to their countries. And we're poor because they made us poor. So I could go on a whole
Larry,
TED talk
you
about
worked
this.
for the BBC.
I realize I work for the BBC. I realize the irony, and I live in America. I realize the irony. That said, I think whether you're a lawyer, a teacher, or I don't know, professor, you need to have a certain social media presence, because it's like having a shop without a shop front. It's how you present yourself to the world. It's how people perceive you. They determine your professionalism. They determine your respect among your peers based on what that says about you. So it's just something that you need to spend a bit of time to cultivate. Is what I would take leave people with.